State space analysis or our state variable analysis, 5th unit in control systems. So what is the use of this state space analysis? Previously we discussed about transfer function techniques, and we drawn some of the plots like root locus, polar plot, Bode plot, Nyquist plot, etc. So they're all conventional or classical methods. Coming to the state variable method, it overcome all the limitations that is there in the transfer function. So what are the major limitations that in the transfer function? Let us see now. First limitation, if you go for transfer function definition, it is the Laplace transformation of output to the Laplace transformation of the input with all initial conditions are 0. So the transfer function is Laplace transformation of output to the Laplace transformation of input with all the initial conditions are 0. So this is the first limitation. So if you are consider the initial conditions are 0, then only we can apply this technique to analyze or design a control system. And the second one is, it is only valid for linear time invariant systems. What is meant by linear time invariant systems? The system must be linear and time invariant. What is meant by linear? So linear means which is having linear function. So the system having linear function, then only we can apply transfer function technique to analyze the system. So and also the second point is, what is the difference between time variant and time invariant? Coming to the time variant and time invariant, the name itself indicates that the system is varying with respect to the time, then it is called as time variant. The system is not varying with respect to time, that is called as time invariant. So these transfer function technique is only valid for linear and time invariant systems. So that is one of the limitation. And coming to the third limitation, it is applicable to, if you go for third limitation, it is applicable to SISO system. Do you know what is SISO? Single input, single output systems. If you observe that for any system, if you consider here a system, the input is x of t and the output is y of t, and if you give the feedback also, no problem, you will get some error detector and all. So finally there is one input and one output. So this transfer function is applicable for the one input, one output systems, that is called as single input, single output system. That is also one limitation. So that is a very, very important point that we've overcome in state space analysis and state variable methods. And the fourth one, if you go for fourth one, I will write here, fourth one. And the fourth disadvantage in transfer function method is it do not describe the internal state of the system. It do not describe the internal state of the system. So what is meant by internal state means that is nothing but initial value of the system. Initial value of the system. So it do not describe that it means what here, the transfer function technique do not describe the internal state of the system, that is initial value of the system. Yeah, we are taking initial value or initial conditions are taken as 0 in transfer function technique, right? So that is a one disadvantage. Yes, of course, this is the first one, and the fourth one is almost similar. So initial conditions are not taken means internal state, we are not describing about internal state, right? And the fifth one, this method gives only state response. The last one is this method, the transfer function method. This method gives only zero static response. What is meant by zero static? Zero static means it is depends on input. So zero static response means the response. What is zero static response? Response means what? Output. Response depends on input, that we called zero static response. And one more response is also there, that is zero input response is also there. Zero input response, that means the response depends on initial value. If the responses depends on the initial values, then it is called as zero input response. Zero static response means the responses depends on the input, that it is called as zero static response. So these are all limitations in transfer function method. We overcome all these limitations by using a new technique that is called as state space analysis or state variable method. So in state variable method, the first one is we are consider initial conditions, and also it is applicable for both the linear and non-linear functions and time variant and time invariant functions. And most important one is it is applicable for, it is means what? State variable method is applicable for multi-input multi-output systems. And also whenever you consider initial conditions, so it describes the internal state of the system. So state variable method describes the internal state of the system because we are considering the initial conditions over here. And state variable method gives zero static response and zero input response, right? These are all these limitations, whatever the limitations that we are observed in transfer function technique, that we overcome by using state variable method or state space method.